Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of Women of Purpose, and I'm here, Shar Pittman, with Wendy Muska, to continue our discussion on codependency. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the behaviors or the manifestations. What does codependency look like?
Right.
How does it manifest in our lives, and what does that look like? So we had a lot of really great discussion off. During the break, I wish you guys could be involved in the. I know in the break sessions, we should have a break session. But anyways, let's dive right into this, Wendy, on what codependency looks like.
Right.
Are the behavior.
I think this is going to make codependency a little bit more crystal clear for our
Yes,
audience,
I
because
believe
it is
so.
such a murky concept. It's a tough concept to start thinking about, and the label is a label that is a little bit murky for a lot of different things. But I think when you really start hearing, how does codependency manifest in my life? So what are the behaviors that come when I'm acting in the world in a codependent manner? So I'm sharing the power over my happiness, my thoughts, and my feelings with other people outside of me. That codependent relationship. So I think this is going to be so helpful.
Yeah, why don't we define before we dive into it, let's define again what codependency is.
Okay. So co is the idea of shared, a dependency on like, I can't be okay with myself unless you're okay with me. So I'm sharing the power over my peace and on my happiness with people and things outside of myself. When really, the only thing you really have any control over in this whole world is yourself and this one moment and how you choose to respond to it. I don't have control over you, Shar, even no matter how hard I try. I have no control over you. I have no control over anybody else's actions, reactions, thoughts, and moods. So codependency is when I think I have power to affect or change other people, and I live my life overly connected to the opinions of other people.
That's so good.
Okay.
That's good. Now let's talk about what that looks like.
Right.
Behavior of a codependent person.
And I think it does manifest itself in women in a whole gradient of healthy, unhealthy ways. No one else gets to choose whether or not your behavior is healthy or unhealthy. You get to choose that.
Yeah, that's really good. We get to choose it.
We get to choose that.
Right.
And no one else gets to define your trauma or what you're reacting to in your life but you.
Yeah.
But most people, when they're behaving in a way, it's like I call them maladaptive coping skills. So it's a coping skill that they've learned that has gotten them through some tough thing in their life. But it's not a healthy coping skill. And codependency is not a healthy coping skill. So people who are codependent consistently neglect their own self-care.
Okay.
They have very little sense of self. One of my mantras in life is no one else is ever going to care about your happiness as much as you should. You are creating your life.
Yeah.
You are creating your life. Yeah. And you have to be in charge of saying, I want peace, joy, and happiness in my life, and I am going to do what I can do to create that.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And being aware, the first step to regaining that in your life is to be aware of the problem.
Right.
And you can't change what you don't acknowledge. We can't change what we don't know. And so that's the first step, is understanding, like, oh my gosh, this sounds like me.
Right.
And so these behaviors then will kind of hopefully identify some of that in us.
Right. So that you consistently neglect your own self-care. You don't do the little things that create happiness in your life. I have a client who struggles with codependency in her relationships. Sometimes we're not codependent in all of our relationships. But her big thing was this soap. So she would have this soap that like her grandma or her mom would buy her, and it was really expensive soap. But she would never, and the woman's a doctor, she has money, and she would never go buy herself this soap because she didn't think she deserved it.
Wow.
It's that level of consistent neglect to yourself, right? Always thinking everybody else needs to be happy. What can I do to make everybody else happy? What can I buy for other people to make them happy? Or time spent on them, making them happy, but you spend no time on making yourself happy.
Yeah.
Creating your own happiness and joy. It's all about everybody else. Oftentimes, this is a big one, especially for women. You say yes when you want to say no. But you gain a resentment when you do that. So it's if you say yes It is completely unfair to gain a resentment for the fact that you're doing something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So unfair. If you say yes when you want to say no, then it's all on you.
Right.
Then the other thing that happens is we get angry at people for asking us to do things because we have a compulsion to say
To say
yes.
yes. Yeah.
The person has a compulsion to say yes. So instead they just get mad at that other person that is consistently asking them to do something. So you take the daughter who has kids and is consistently asking grandma to babysit. And grandma is complaining to everybody else, "Oh my gosh, I wish you would just get her life together so I don't have to keep babysitting these kids. She needs to figure something else out." But the system works for her daughter.
Right.
Her daughter is solving her daycare problem.
Right. Right.
You are the solution to your daughter's daycare problem.
Right. Because you've said yes.
Because you keep saying yes.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
the systems, for people who are codependent and they find themselves in these faulty relationship systems, the relationship systems work for the other person.
Right.
That's why they don't change.
Right. Right. Because we teach people how to
to
treat
treat
us.
us. Yes.
We, like you said, continue saying yes when we want to say no, or you're going to do this thing because they asked you, because you don't want to, you want to be accepted by
Right.
them and you want to be loved by them. So that's a lot of striving. I think we talked about that earlier.
Striving.
It's striving
Right.
for the wrong things.
Right.
We should be striving to be healthy for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What did you say earlier about, happiness doesn't come from somebody else. Happiness comes from within.
Right.
We talked earlier in the break, I think it was, it comes from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Absolutely.
And that's what we
Absolutely.
have to understand. And I believe that we're going to empower a whole bunch of women out there on how to quit living this life of codependency.
Right. It's the idea of, if my coworker at work would just stop doing that thing, I would be happy in my job. If my husband would just stop doing that thing, I would be happy in my marriage.
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of saying, I believe there's 3 states of relationship: acceptance, change, and end. You're either accepting something about somebody, you're asking for change about something, and then if the change doesn't happen, you have 2 ideas. You can either accept that the change isn't happening, or you end the relationship. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Right? So, but people who have struggled with codependency don't ask for change. They don't think they have the right to ask for change in a relationship.
Yeah.
They want to avoid conflict at all costs. They want everybody else to be happy,
Yeah.
even at the cost of their own happiness.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy making.
Yeah.
They're like compulsive people pleasers. Not
Yeah.
just, I really like when people are happy. It's a compulsion.
Yeah.
Like it
kind of
keeps them
obsession.
up at night.
Yeah. They're obsessed with
Right.
it. Yeah.
They're obsessed with fixing other people's problems.
Yeah. And then they're mad about it.
And then
And
they resent the fact
they resent
that
the fact.
I'm trying harder to fix your life and fix your problem than you are. And then they're mad about that.
Right. But they
Like,
keep doing it.
But they keep doing it.
Right.
And it works for everybody else
Except
except for
me.
you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you look at everybody else and you say, stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because this is how it's making me feel.
Yeah.
And you don't understand that you just need to say no or detach from that.
Right. Detach is a
Yeah.
really great word.
Right.
Because anything that you're attached to, you give power to. And then your happiness is determined by what they do or don't do.
Right.
And so it's the crazy cycle.
It is a crazy cycle.
It's a crazy cycle.
So it's compulsive people pleasing. You feel an enormous amount of guilt when you don't do what people ask you to do. You don't create healthy boundaries in a relationship on your own. You expect the other people to create healthy boundaries that work for you.
Say
But
that again?
you expect other people to create in the relationship a healthy boundary that works for you. And they're just supposed to somehow know that through the magic of telepathy or something, what you need in a relationship.
Right.
You don't ever say that, but you just say, well, they just need to they need to stop asking me for money. But if you keep giving them money every time that they ask,
They're going to keep
they're
asking.
going to keep asking.
Right.
One of my models in life is sometimes our helping is not helpful. Sometimes we think we're helping, but it's really not helpful.
Yeah.
It's more helpful for me to say no
Yeah.
and tell them that they have to figure out a different way to live. But
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
topic.
That's great.
So people who struggle with codependency are amazing at taking care of other people, but they never ask for help. They feel like if I ask for help about anything, I'm being a huge burden. So there is a complete imbalance in the scales of their relationship where they're giving, and then they're mad that nobody ever helps them with anything, but then they never ask for help.
Because why do you think that is? You said it earlier. Why don't they ask for help?
Because they feel like they're being a burden to people.
Or they don't deserve the help.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when I'm working with people that have that mindset, I always tell them, when you ask somebody else for help, you're really giving them the opportunity to love you the way you need to be loved in that minute. And most of us, when somebody asks us for help within a healthy, balanced relationship, we feel pretty honored.
Right.
You know, like if you choose to share a burden with me, I feel honored.
Yeah.
That's how most people feel.
Yeah.
But people who are codependent feel like if I give you my burden, or tell you what I need, I'm giving you my burden, and that's unkind. And they feel that way because they feel so burdened by everyone.
Yeah.
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 So
That's really
we take care of others without asking for help. Worry constantly and consistently all the time about everybody else. They don't understand the limits of their own control. We have points of impact in our relationships with people, but we don't have control of other people. Like if I want to have a good relationship with my sister, then I need to do what I can do to be a good sister. But having a good relationship is also dependent on how she wants to interact with me. It's not completely in my control to have good relationships with people.
Right. I love that. You have to say that again. We have points of impact with people,
Right.
but not control.
Yeah.
So we cannot control people.
Right.
We can only really impact them.
Right.
And it's outside of my control whether or not they're going to receive that
Exactly.
and do anything in return.
Right.
Because
Right.
really, we need to be in relationships understanding that I need to be me and influencing them. If they receive that influence or not, that's not up to me.
Exactly.
So it's not up to me if they don't want to have a
Right.
relationship with me. If they don't want, then
Right.
it's not
A
my
really
control.
good life mantra is you need to feel good about the way you're interacting in the world. And if I feel good about the way I'm interacting in the world or interacting in my relationship with you, then if the relationship doesn't work, I have to accept that.
Yeah.
I've done the best I can do. So
Yeah.
the only thing we have control over in this entire world is ourself
Yeah.
and how we respond to the world and respond in this one moment. We can think about the future and how we want to respond in those moments, and we should, so that we're acting in a way that we feel good about.
Yeah.
But we can't change the past.
Right.
And that's a whole other podcast. But
Right.
we can't change the past.
Right.
But we do have points of impact.
Yeah.
So we have ways that we can affect situations.
Right.
If I want to have you to my house for a dinner party and I want you to have a nice time, I'm going to try to create a nice atmosphere. I'm going to try to have a nice meal for you. But whether or not you have a good time is not up to me.
Right. That's a great.
Yeah.
That's
Your experience is not really in my control.
Yeah.
I have points of impact over it, but I'm not in control of your
Yeah.
experience, of me or the things we do together.
Yeah.
People who struggle with codependency feel obligated to solve other people's problems to the point of obsession. To the point where they will make, 15 phone calls on behalf of that person trying to solve that problem. Like you're working harder than the person is. And
Yeah.
one of the things I tell my clients is I can't work harder than you do.
Yeah.
Because change happens when people leave my office, not when they come to my office. If they leave my office and they try to do something different, change can happen. People think that, I'm in therapy, so that change should just manifest itself like I'm magic. I'm not magic.
Right.
All we do is talk about things, change perceptions, bring awareness.
Yeah.
But I'm not. The change happens when you walk out the door and you try to do something different.
Right. Applying the things that you're hearing, the tools that you're getting, applying that to your life, and then being aware of it, applying the things to your life, and actually doing something different.
Right.
You can't keep doing the same thing expecting a different result.
Absolutely.
That's the crazy cycle.
Right.
It's crazy when I keep doing the same thing expecting to have a different result. Can't do it.
People who consider their lives to be successful, this is just a little tidbit, kind of off topic, but people who believe that their lives are successful, all they do every day is they get up and put together a string of good decisions and good choices that support their goals.
Yeah.
And if they make a bad choice, they brush it off and start again.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't magic. It's not
Yeah.
rocket science.
It's
I am
not-
not a rocket scientist.
No, it's not, but we're bringing this into
Awareness,
light and,
right.
and getting people aware of maybe a frustration of
Right.
why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and I'm so mad. Why am I so mad at my kids? Because I am, why do they keep doing this, and why do they keep making bad decisions, and why does my husband not take out the trash, or why doesn't he, things make you mad, and because that's in you, but now we're understanding why that's in you.
Right.
So now we can bring light to it, and we can
Right.
change.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
People with codependency often feel used by people, but they don't feel close to them. And, really emotionally intimate relationships are based on us being vulnerable with somebody else.
Okay.
And if we're never vulnerable about what our needs are, our thoughts are, our reactions to the world, and we don't ever share them with someone else, there's not going to be that level of closeness. But if I'm codependent and I never think about what I need or what I'm thinking, I only think about what you need and what you're thinking, I would have no need or desire to tell you what I'm thinking and feeling. I
Yeah.
wouldn't think it's important.
Yeah.
But for us to have a really close relationship, I need to be able to be emotionally vulnerable to you. To be really deeply known by somebody means that you feel deeply loved by them and you can be deeply accepted by them. But
Yeah.
I'm responsible for being deeply known by someone. I
Right.
have to share myself.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So people who are codependent feel used by people, but they don't feel close to them, and they want to feel close to them, but they don't understand that they have to do their part to feel
Yeah.
close to someone.
Yeah.
You have to tell somebody what you think and feel.
Yeah. Yeah. That I think is huge, because that's a big one.
That's a big one.
That's a real big one, because when you're not comfortable with being vulnerable, because you don't feel like someone really wants to hear your heart or really wants your heart, then you just don't do it.
And if you grew up in a system that nobody ever asked you
Right.
your thoughts, feelings, and opinions, then why would you ever think that you should share them with anybody?
Right.
Or especially share them with the people who maybe you grew up with that never asked.
Right.
So it's really, you don't even have an understanding of why would anybody want to know what I think or
Right.
feel. What I think or feel is not important.
Right.
What they think or feel is important.
Right. Because you were never asked, so
Right.
therefore it wasn't important. And so therefore you just don't ever do it. So
Right.
that the to bring change into that is we have to take that step, even though it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. It's not going to feel good because we've never done it,
Right.
and open ourselves up to do that.
Because if I never, in my own mind, think about myself, how can I ever look at you and then ask you to validate me? I can't, because I'm never telling you who I really am for you to validate me.
Right.
To say, oh, Wendy, I like who you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because I'm never telling you who I am. I'm
Right.
just becoming who you want me to be.
Say that one more. I'm becoming what you want me to be,
Yep.
instead of becoming who I truly am.
Exactly.
A lot of it is in fear that you're not going to like me. I think being vulnerable is vulnerable and authentic. It's like, when people really see who I am, they're not going to like me, or they're not going to receive me, or I'm not going to, get from them what I need, basically.
Right.
So
I think codependent thinking, it's just almost like habitual. You don't think about it in that depth
Yeah.
to say, I'm doing this in a purposeful, intended way. It's like a habit
Yeah.
that you don't even think anybody cares about what you think or feel.
Yeah.
It just, to have a relationship with you, I will be what you need and become what you need and do all the things you need so you're happy, and then I'll just be happy because you're happy.
Right. But then you're miserable,
Right.
because you're not getting your needs met.
Yeah. People who are codependent have ideas that other people are ruining their life by their behaviors and actions. Like the child, the parent who has a kid that is making decisions that are not in line with what the parent wants them to do. And they say, now everybody thinks I'm a bad parent because how you're behaving. That's how attached they are to their own children's choices.
Wow.
I mean, anybody that is parent teenagers, I mean, that's really where you start understanding, like, your kids do a whole lot of stuff that you don't want them to do, never wanted them to do, didn't teach them to do.
Right.
and that their decisions, everybody has their own self-will. Like they have their own self-will to
Yeah.
make their own determinations. And it's not always a reflection of what kind of parent I was.
Right.
I think mature parents understand that.
Right.
We are no longer the parents that look at other people in Walmart and say, well, my kid would never act like that.
Yeah.
Because, hey, your kid will act like that. Just so
will.
you know,
They
right?
sure will.
People who are codependent struggle with self-esteem or self-respect. And their behaviors that they choose really do support their understanding of having no self-respect for themselves. I can choose
Wow.
behaviors that say like, I have respect for myself, and so I'm not going to tolerate that behavior out of you. But people who are codependent oftentimes have given their self-respect away, and they say what you think of me is more important than what I think of me, so you can treat me any way you want as long as you like me, even if the way they treat you is unkind. So people
Yeah.
with codependency really struggle in getting in toxic, bad relationships.
And stay there.
And stay there because they
sometimes.
don't have any concept of the idea that I deserve to be respected.
Yeah.
That no one else has to validate my truth for it to be truth.
Yeah.
No one else has to tell me the way I want to be treated is okay for me to say that's how I want to be treated. I think other people have to tell me, oh, yeah, I agree with your decision there. And because I agree with your decision, I'm going to treat you that way. Well, people in your life who are toxic, excuse me, aren't going to do that.
Right, because we've given them permission to continue to treat us that way because we have taught them how to treat us.
Exactly.
And we stay in a relationship and I was saying earlier, I think it was in the break, how when we grow up in an environment and we grow up in a what we believe is normal, just the toxicity and things like that becomes normal, then when we move on to another relationship, we bring that in there because that's normal.
Right.
And we don't know that it's not normal until something is brought to our attention and you're like, I remember going to counseling for the first time and this coming to my awareness that I struggled with being codependent. And it was just like this light bulb moment where it was just like this flashback of like a movie, my whole life.
Right.
And going, oh my gosh. So then I felt powerful. I felt like, okay, I'm not an alien.
Right.
I'm not weird. This is just something that I can change. It's something that I lived and now I can change it. And then you got to go the process of doing that. But it has to be aware and do something different.
Right. People who are codependent, being in relationships with people that are critical and hurtful and unpredictable feels comfortable.
Yeah.
Because if you've
Yeah.
grown up with any of that, that feels comfortable. You know how to manage that.
Right.
You're like, oh yeah, I know how to do this.
Right.
And it feels comfortable. There's so many processes that go on inside of us that we are completely unaware of, that are these maladaptive coping skills that we have picked up from unkind circumstances in our own life, that if we would just take a minute, maybe a little longer than a minute, and unravel ourself, that our processes or relationships in our life will change, even if the other person doesn't change.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where I will have one spouse come in and not the other person come in to work on their marriage, and the marriage changes because the one person changes the dynamics within the marriage.
Wow.
It's crazy to think
Yeah.
about that, but it's true.
Yeah. So what are so you said coping skills. Okay. So, what are some of those coping skills that you were talking about?
Like maladaptive coping
Yeah.
skills.
Yep.
It's people pleasing. It's being obsessed with other people's ideas, that they have, other people's opinions have to be right and not mine. There's such a long list of
Yeah.
maladaptive coping skills. But if you are acting in any other way other than kind of a wiser version of a child, then you're probably acting that way because something in your life corrupted you.
Yeah.
And you've learned how to cope with that situation, and you've taken that as part of yourself.
Yeah.
And one of my things is like, I'm always trying to get back to my original design.
Yeah, that's
who I
good.
was when I was this 7-year-old who thought the world was amazing.
Yeah.
That's who I want to live my life as. It's
Yeah.
a wiser version of that.
Yeah.
Without the maladaptive things that I've picked up through my life that really don't work for me and really don't serve me well.
And never should.
And never should.
And never should. Yeah, so the original design. And the original design is to actually know who I am as a person. Because when I believe that when we have grown up in homes or just in life, and probably a codependent person, has allowed people to identify and to stamp their approval on me, which that's all that I have to go on.
Right.
So like my identity is based in somebody else's like or dislike of me. And as long as they're okay, then I'm okay. So then, boy, you take that into your adulthood and you take that into other relationships, then you really don't know who you are.
Really, right.
And so when I realized that, I remember that aha moment that I had. I remember that like just plain as day. I remember exactly where I was standing. I remember just like it was a minute ago. And it was like, okay, no, I'm not doing this another day. I'm not doing this another day, because I realized that I am going to live life, and it's not perfect, because I get those moments where you're like, oh, okay. As we're talking, I'm thinking, dang it, that's probably some codependency there.
You're right.
But it's like when you make a decision that I don't want to live another day like this, because I want to be able to wake up and enjoy life and say, oh, I get another day, and not be mad and angry or sad or depressed or oppressed or all of those things. And a lot of it is because there's things that we've just learned how to do, and now we're going to go on the path of unlearning how to do certain things so that we can learn new behaviors and apply those things and literally transform my life and transform my relationships and transform how I do life every single day. So anyway, so this was really fun. I hope that there was a lot of stuff in there.
Was there? Good.
So you guys are going to have to go back and re-listen. So there's going to be some links on the bottom there, as always, with Wendy's information and resources and things like that for you guys to go to. But we're going to end this episode of Woman of Purpose, and join us for the next one. Have a good day.